thing just shut off. You don't have this one. Play first thing in the game. All the way around.
No, he won't. I like that.
Oh,
It's
two
nuts.
games.
Well, there's just the DS, right? It goes back to letter E, and then Fine is right before H.
Is it rondo time?
Yeah, let's just take a
We can take a minute.
take a little moment.
Andy, Andy, could you check with the rules?
Yeah, sorry. I was getting around that.
It's just that when I was bouncing up and down a little bit.
Where you going? Oh, it's a hose.
So, I've been told that when the last professor stepped out from these white columns over here,
Yeah.
that's when I queued you all. Just stop to like slowly stop playing.
Just play, stop playing the prelude or the
For the for processional.
procession.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll just wait for you to go. Just
Yep.
give us that.
Perfect.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, make sure it's not this.
Yeah.
Make
No,
sure
I'm
it's
We had somebody before do this. We were like,
Would you like some more?
yeah, stretch. So what will happen is when you indicate for the processional that we should stop, we'll play a little bit longer to find a cadence point so it doesn't sound weird.
That's totally fine. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what
Not
I
sounding
figured.
weird is kind of one of our goals.
Right? You're like, that's the mission. We
Yeah,
want
yeah.
this to be weird.
We like the not weird goal.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Perfect. I'll give you a cue in just a minute or two for the
Okay.
processional.
Do you need to?
When you're shooting this, when they see procession, you don't shoot down there.
There's no limit shooting.
Welcome to Convocation. Please be seated. The academic year is punctuated by ceremonies, and this is one of my favorites. In May, we gather in this same beautiful setting for commencement, which celebrates the achievements of our students and marks their transition to life after W&L. And then we disperse for the summer. Students travel, faculty immerse themselves in scholarship, staff accomplish projects all over campus. And each of us is grateful for the change of pace and the change of season, but there's something missing, something that impels us toward this moment when summer transitions into fall. Convocation, which is literally a calling together, marks the moment when we reassemble ourselves as a community. As students, as teachers, and as staff devoted to providing an environment in which teaching and learning can take place, our avocations, that which we are called to do, require our convocation, our being called together. None of us can be who we are individually without all of us being here collectively, which is why this time of year feels so good. We're once again able to be our best selves. Convocation emphasizes and celebrates the fact that we are an academic community. We wear our ceremonial regalia to signify that our distinctively academic work, the fundamental work of the university which unites us all, has commenced. We welcome our newly arrived undergraduates and law students, and we encourage the members of the class of 2025 to make the most of your final year at Washington and Lee. This ceremony is momentous enough that it calls for music appropriate to the occasion, which we can always count on the university singers to provide. This year they've chosen Caedmon's Hymn by Blake Wilson. The text of Caedmon's Hymn, dating from the 7th century, is the oldest known surviving English poem. It likely provided the origin of the word Middle Earth, which Tolkien used to name the land in The Lord of the Rings. The modern musical composition by American composer Blake Wilson, who wrote the piece as a 21-year-old college student, exemplifies the impact of a liberal arts education, drawing inspiration from subjects that have been studied for centuries to craft meaningful contributions to our present-day world. Dr. Lynch and the university singers, take it away. Thank you, University Singers and Professor Lynch. I'm now delighted to introduce our speaker, Dr. Roosevelt Montás. Roosevelt Montás is a senior lecturer in American Studies and English at Columbia University, where he directed the core curriculum from 2008 to 2018. He currently directs the Freedom and Citizenship program at the Center for American Studies, which brings low-income high school students to Columbia to study political theory and prepare to apply to college. Dr. Montás and I have been personally acquainted for about an hour. We first met earlier this afternoon, but I recognized him as a kindred spirit from the moment I opened his book, Rescuing Socrates: How the Great Books Changed My Life and Why They Matter for a New Generation, which I heartily commend to you all. Dr. Montás and I have traveled different life paths to arrive on this stage together today, and he will share more of his own remarkable story in a minute. But our college experiences were profoundly similar. We each landed on campus, fresh from a public high school, and were immediately immersed in strange, startling, and profound works of literature and philosophy that raised the most fundamental human questions. What is the good life? Which values should I hold dear? What is the relationship between morality and religion? What is the nature of a just society? How can I know the truth? Dr. Montás and I were electrified by our encounters with the 2,000-year-old tradition of grappling with these questions. We were inspired by our extraordinary teachers. And, as Zora Neale Hurston might have put it, our horizons shifted. The futures we could imagine for ourselves changed. One thing led to another, and to our astonishment, we eventually found ourselves teaching those very same questions. We found ourselves wholehearted, full-throated advocates of liberal arts education, and that's why we're here today. Dr. Montás graduated in 1995 with a major in comparative literature from Columbia, where he went on to earn a PhD in English. In 2000, he received Columbia's Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching by a graduate student. In 2004, his doctoral dissertation, Rethinking America, won Columbia's Bancroft Award for Excellence. And in 2008, he received the Dominican Republic's National Youth Prize. Dr. Montás specializes in antebellum American literature and culture with a particular interest in American national identity. He regularly teaches moral and political philosophy in Columbia's core curriculum, as well as seminars in American studies, including freedom and citizenship in the United States. The title of Dr. Montás's address today is Sacred and Worldly Meanings in Our Condition of Freedom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Roosevelt Montás to Washington and Lee.
President Will Dudley, Provost Lena Hill, Dean Sean Kimber, Dean Alex Miller, Dean Rob Strogan, Dean Melanie Wilson, members of the faculty, members of the administrative staff, students, families, friends. It is an honor for me to join you in ushering in Washington and Lee's new academic year. We are convened here with processions, solemn music, and public speeches. Some of us are dressed in these silly outfits, sporting the latest medieval fashions. It's an occasion wrapped in ceremony, in ritual, in tradition. But why these ceremonies of renewal and initiation? Some of the meanings of this convocation are worldly, and some of the meanings of this gathering are sacred. Along with commencement, this is the moment in our academic year in which we most deliberately approach the sacred dimension of our reason for being. This is not our ordinary activity of teaching, research, publication, and committee meetings. We set this time aside, and we mark it with ritual in order to recall our core purpose, to draw nourishment from the wellsprings of our vocation. Why are we here? Why are you here listening to this person? Who is this person? Why is he here speaking to me? It is a matter of astonishment to me that I am here today. I grew up in the mountains of the Dominican Republic. I came to the United States with my older brother just before my 12th birthday to join our mother, who had immigrated 3 years earlier. Soon after we arrived, she lost her minimum wage job. We didn't qualify for welfare. We didn't speak English. We couldn't pay the rent. We didn't even know how to dress for winter. There is no roadmap from that kind of precariousness and marginality to this podium. It may be a trite thing to say, but it's true nevertheless, that in no other country is a story like mine likely to unfold. You see, something happened to me, something like what happened to President Dudley, something that those of you who are here to begin college will experience. My life was transformed and galvanized by something called a liberal education. It is possible, even likely, that your life, like mine, will be transformed by your liberal education, that your perspective of the world, like mine, will be altered and enriched by the experience of reading books and sitting in classrooms and discussing with peers and professors the deepest questions that concern us as human beings. If you pursue a liberal education with intellectual integrity, it will transform your life and open your minds in ways that you can't imagine. It will make you a deeper and more authentic and more awake human being. You may think that I am overpromising, but I am not. But do note that there is one condition: that you approach your liberal education with intellectual integrity. Simply sitting through the courses and getting A's won't do. You can go through college successfully and still have wasted your time doing it. Intellectual integrity means honesty, openness, and the courage to ask the most fundamental questions. It means never ignoring, suppressing, or dismissing your deepest intuitions of truth. Only truth satisfies, and intellectual integrity is the requirement for its pursuit. Ultimately, the reason I am here is because you and I and this institution have some deep commitments in common. For 10 years, I served as director of Columbia University's core curriculum, a 100-year-old program that has been influential in the evolution of liberal education in the United States. What do we have in common? What brings me here today is a commitment to the values, practices, and vision of a liberal education. And what is that, a liberal education? In its simplest terms, it is the kind of education appropriate for individuals who are free. While the education you will receive at Washington and Lee will equip you for many things, its fundamental aim is not to fit you for an occupation, but to prepare you for a way of life, and specifically for a way of life that is free and purposeful. The primary concern of liberal education is not with how you will make your living, but with how you will live your life. Some of you here are preparing for the practice of law, perhaps the most humanistic of all the professions. The liberal aspect of your education will concern itself not with making you a competent and effective lawyer, but with how you think about the purpose of law in our society, how you think about the relation between law and human flourishing. At its most fundamental level, the law is concerned with the same enduring human dilemmas we encounter in great literature, in philosophy, and in history, the same dilemmas that a liberal education prepares us to confront. Education today needs to teach students how to innovate, how to launch entrepreneurial businesses, how to be economically productive. But that's not what liberal education is about. Liberal education teaches you how to think about what good our businesses are for, what ends our innovations advance, what economic productivity is for. Usefulness, productivity, growth, efficiency, all of the words we like to use to advertise the value of education only have meaning by their relationship to something outside of themselves. Useful for what? Productive of what? Efficient in what? Growth towards what? These are the questions of a liberal education. These are the questions raised by our condition of freedom. It's true that our education needs to be practical and pragmatic, useful, but that's not enough. Liberal education doesn't teach you how to do things, it teaches you how to determine what things are worth doing. For as the great philosopher Yogi Berra warned, if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. Our condition of freedom has an individual and a collective aspect. At the individual level, each person has to determine for him or herself what kind of life is most worthwhile living. We each have to arrive at a notion of our own good. No one can do that for you. You, and only you, have to work out what whole way of life is most worthwhile living for you, and then pursue it to the utmost. It is an inescapable task inherent in our condition of freedom. One of the things you learn quickly about the life of freedom is that the key to liberty is the consistent exercise of restraint. To quote Jean-Jacques Rousseau, to be driven by appetite alone is slavery, and obedience to the law one has prescribed for oneself is liberty. The prudential self-restraint that is indispensable to personal flourishing has a political analog that is equally indispensable to civic flourishing. The ultimate expression of our collective self-restraint is our adherence to the rule of law. But following the law is not enough in a democratic society. We must also cultivate a disposition to forego short-term partisan advantage for the long-term interest of our community. Democracy requires a readiness to listen respectfully to those with whom we disagree and to reflect carefully on what they say. In this time of heightened public passions, a liberal education confers on us a special responsibility to participate civilly and generously in the debates that shape our common destiny. In June of 1858, Abraham Lincoln accepted the nomination from the still new Republican Party to run for the U.S. Senate in the state of Illinois. It was a polarized time in America. In his acceptance speech, Lincoln warned ominously about the growing rift. A house divided against itself, he said, quoting the Bible, cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. It will become all one thing or all the other. The parallels between that turbulent time and our own cannot help but strike any student of American history. Today, as in the 1850s, we feel the ground shifting from under us. We feel the deep tectonic plates of our national life moving, putting unprecedented pressures on the fault lines that have long divided us. Some years before the House divided speech, Lincoln was already warning about a breakdown of the fragile democratic order bequeathed to the nation by the Revolution. In a speech at the Young Men's Lyceum in Springfield in 1838, Lincoln surmised that if destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, he said, we must live through all time or die by suicide. Lincoln saw the threat of national suicide in a growing spirit of lawlessness, a disregard for the orderly application of justice, the rise of what he called a mobocratic spirit that, quote, regards government as its deadliest bane and makes jubilee at the suspension of its operations and prays for nothing so much as its total annihilation. Again, Lincoln's words sound prophetic and ring a key familiar to us today. Will our free institutions, our laws, our courts, our electoral system withstand the assaults of those who wish to corrode their legitimacy in order to seize the levers of power? We are approaching a national contest for the presidency of the United States. All eyes are fixed on the momentous decision that the American people will make in November. One party, one candidate must emerge victorious. Which will it be? We cannot know, but we can see storm clouds on the horizon. We can foresee the threat of lawlessness and of the breakdown of our free institutions. In 1838, Lincoln asked, how shall we fortify ourselves against such a threat? And this is the answer he gave. Let every American, every lover of liberty, swear by the blood of the Revolution never to violate the laws of the country and never to tolerate their violation by others. Let every man remember that to violate the law is to tear the character of his own and his children's liberty. Let reverence for the laws become the political religion of the nation. The fervent words of the young Lincoln may sound to us a bit over the top. But I ask you today to consider, in what way was Lincoln right? In what way does our liberty require us to fix and adhere a standard against which our political conflicts may be resolved? To what extent does our liberty depend on a set of rules we agree to play by and whose results we bind ourselves to accept even when they don't break in our favor? In America, the people are sovereign. The people's will is supreme. And how is the people's will to be ascertained in November? Through a national election. In America, the will of the people, as expressed through their electoral choices, is sacred. We must respect that process and abide by its determinations. And if we wish to challenge it, we must do so legally, gathering and presenting evidence before our courts of justice. Lose, disrespect, or violate this sacred obligation to abide by the will of the people, and we have no democracy. I began by talking about the sacred meanings of this occasion and have come around to talking about the worldly meanings of our liberty. I would like to end by returning our attention to the sacred in this occasion, the timeless space of symbol and sanctity, the space in our academic year from which we touch that in the life of the university that reaches for the eternal. To that end, let us keep together a brief moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Montás. To help bring this evening's program to its conclusion, the university singers will perform the Washington and Lee hymn. Would everyone please stand?
In the shadows of white columns, we stop to hear the chimes. One steps on which we linger, slowly yield to time. But when we doubt our future's course, our honor sets us free. A timeless trust in our alma mater, Washington and Lee. As the bells ring out the hour and echo through the halls, we sense in this brief moment the strength within these walls. But when we doubt our future's course, our honor sets us free. A timeless trust in our alma mater, Washington and Lee.
Thank you, university singers. You may remain standing. I want to close by reiterating that we're here to do important work, which we can only do together. We're privileged to serve a noble mission to which every one of us makes distinctive contributions. What we do here matters, and doing it well should bring you a deserved sense of satisfaction. I'd like to thank the class of 1942, whose generous gift supports Convocation. And I'd like to thank Facilities and Public Safety for their extra efforts on this occasion, and Dining Services for the meal that awaits us on Cannan Green. I hope I will see you all there immediately after the ceremony. And with that, and in my formal capacity as president of Washington and Lee, I officially open the 2024-2025 academic year. May it be a good one for all of you. We are adjourned. Thank you.